Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sara Lihz and I have a super fun video for you today. We have 2-for-1 cards. We're going to make a light up shaker rainbow card that's easier than you might think, along with a pot of gold rainbow card using the leftovers from card number 1. So this is the new rainbow shaker die from Trinity Stamps, and I have cut all of my bows out in different colors, and I cut the sort of shaker frame. And I put it on some rip and stick sheet and I was all geared up to use it and then I forgot. But it is there and you can make really cool cards with it. I'm also using the Puffy cloud stencil to make my sort of backdrop for our rainbow. I love this stencil. It is huge and all you have to do is flip and keep stenciling. So I tap into my ink and then I begin on the stencil and pull it gently up to create just that little bit of blue up above the clouds, and I will keep rotating. I use the short sides as well, and I just take one end where there's a bump in a cloud and I sort of line that up with where there was already a cloud. I go all the way down to the bottom and then add just a little bit of blue coming up from the edge just to make everything look cohesive, and that finishes up a really beautiful cloud panel. So I'm going to take either one of the rainbow dies and I am going to cut that shape into that backdrop. Okay, so I'm going to peel this out of here. I have this great panel, but there's a whole bunch of leftovers in that die. So that's what I'm saving for the next card. So I'm not going to throw that away. Here I am gluing an A2 panel 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch piece of pale blue cardstock onto my card base. And then I'm going to take my little frame and I am going to temporarily tape that onto my card base. That panel measures 5.5 inches wide by 3.5 inches tall. And I'm going to use this to help get the placement just perfect for all of the bows on my rainbow. I'm using wet glue to do this. It gives me a little bit of wiggle room in case I don't get the placement just right. But you could also use rip and stick sheet behind these and that would work really well also. So after I put in my last little bow, I can lift that frame off the panel and move on to the next part of the card. I have a little bit of acetate that I've cut from some leftover packaging, and I'm going to glue this to the back side of my cloud panel. I went a little heavy-handed with my glue, but I do that a lot. So I'm a professional at not getting glue in the middle. So I just push from the window outward so that any excess glue is going to ooze to the outside of the card instead of where the shaker goes. This is an easy light. This is from Pearblossom Press. You can get them in the Trinity shop, and it has 3 different lights and a battery pack, and all you have to do is put the battery in it, and that's it. You push the button and the whole thing lights up. So I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to place it, and to give myself a little bit of extra room behind that panel, I'm tracing lines at the top and bottom. And then I have cut 2 strips of darker blue cardstock and I'm going to glue them to the edges of my panel just so that a little bit is peeking out from behind it, right? Normally I might just have a matte layer, but since I have that window for my shaker, this works beautifully. I'm going to do the top one as well. Again, I like wet glue here. It just lets me wiggle everything and make sure I have kind of the same amount showing on the top and bottom. This also gives me just a little bit more room to hide that battery pack. Once that's completed, I can work on placement for my battery pack. I know it's going in this top right corner, so I'm putting it over the top panel just to make sure it fits there. Then I will bring in my pencil and I'm going to hover it right over the button that you push. I'm going to remove the battery pack and the cloud panel and make that dot on the background. Then I'm going to make sure that the switch is right over top of that dot and I trace all the way around the battery pack. That way, as I'm stamping and I'm putting everything together, I know that the pack is in the same spot every time. I'm going to use the Papercrafting Magic stamp set and pick up the word push. I placed it right over top of that pencil dot where the button will go. And then I will add my cloud panel right on top. I have those lines that kind of help me know where it's going to go. And I can just stamp on top of that and I know everything's going to line up beautifully. I have a little bit of double-sided tape that I'm going to add to the back of this battery pack, and then I will remove that backing paper and I can put this straight onto my cards. You guys, this is so simple. I promise if you haven't tried a light up card, it is totally worth it. I'm going to carefully separate my lights. There is sort of a top and a bottom to the light. So I'm making sure that the light is going to shine up, and I'm placing it just at the very bottom of the rainbow, and I'll use some Scotch tape right over the top of it so I know it's not going to move. I will be adding clouds to the rainbow later, so it can cover up a little bit of tape if that is showing. I have 3 lights on here, and if you're only using 2, you can cut the third one off and it's not a big deal. But I figured let's use all 3. So I have 1 on the left and I have 2 lights on the right, so it's extra bright. Like maybe that's where the pot of gold is, sort of hiding back behind the rainbow. And then once those are in place, I will very carefully kind of situate my wires inside that pencil line that I drew and tape everything down. So here it is, everything is secured, and I have my battery pack up in the top right, and I'm gonna bring in some double-sided tape. This is the Pearblossom Press World's Best Foam Tape, and it's amazing, you guys. I'm actually using a half a strip here, but I surrounded the rainbow because I am gonna make a shaker, and then I put it everywhere else inside my pencil lines and around my battery pack. I went right over top of the wires. It's not a big deal. I'm using SOAPY Baubles sequins from Trinity. These are a favorite. They're just a super sparkly, clear, iridescent sequin. And I love that, so you can sort of see the rainbow through them. And then I can place this piece right on top and finish up my shaker. You guys, if I hadn't gotten that placed on there right, the Pearblossom foam tape lets you remove that very easily without tearing your paper for about a half hour. I didn't need to. I feel like I have more confidence when I'm using that tape, because if I get it wrong, I can redo it. And so I'm just a little steadier, a little more confident when I go to place it down. It makes shaker cards so easy. I'm bringing in this What's Up stamp set. There are a whole bunch of like, you light up my life, your future is bright, and we have this light up rainbow. So I'm checking to see how this kind of fits underneath there, and I really like that. So I'm going to use You Brighten My Day. In the back of my pack, I have some strips of acetate that are the same size as the sentiment strips I want to make. And so I stamped it onto some scratch paper, and then I'm just sort of squaring that off with some scraps of cardstock. Then I can remove the acetate and replace it with my sentiment strip, and I can stamp onto it and know that it's going to be perfectly centered every time. It's also really great if you're going to stamp more than one. I know that for some people this seems sort of backwards, but I have the hardest time getting my sentiments straight sometimes, and so this is what works for me. Hopefully that's helpful for some of you. I cut a strip of dark teal cardstock that's just slightly bigger, and I glued that on there so that on the top and bottom and on the left it has the same margin, and then I can just trim off little slivers until the right hand side also fits. I wasn't sure what I was going to use this card for, so I actually added the You Brighten My Day on there with some removable adhesive. That way, if later on I decide I want this to be a birthday card, I can easily swap that out. At this point, I'm realizing that I never added the frame onto my shaker window, but you could have just glued that onto the top, or you can stack it up in a couple layers of some heavyweight cardstock and then create individual shaker wells for each of the bows of your rainbow, which is super awesome. I finished this off by adding some frosted glass baubles, and that is a completed light up rainbow shaker. I hope that you will give that a try. I love it so much, you guys. This second card uses one of my very favorite background stamps. This is the Abstract Scratch background stamp from Trinity. And I'm going to stamp that onto some white cardstock that measures 3.5 by 4 3/4. I'm treating it with a little anti-static powder, and then I'm going to stamp this using Versamark ink, but any clear sticky ink would work. And then we're going to gold heat emboss this. So in the first card, we created that cloud panel, and I cut the center out of my cloud panel using the rainbow die. Well, we're going to use those cloud stenciled rainbow bows, if that makes sense, to create our rainbow on this card. So I want to create a rainbow background to bring in that color that we're otherwise kind of missing. So I added some gold embossing powder and I heat set that, and now I'm coming in with some lemonade dye ink. I always start with my yellow, otherwise my yellow gets lost. And when I'm making a rainbow, I prefer to do it using just 3 colors. So I took that yellow through the middle, and then imagine that there are 5 sections on this panel. I need that yellow to cover the middle 3 so that I can bring the pink in on the top 2 and the blue in on the bottom 2. And that will also create for me this peachy orange and a lovely green as well. I love this rainbow. I love it so much. So this is the Leprechaun Loot die set. It's super cute. It's an interactive die set, though you wouldn't have to make it interactive if you didn't want. And I'm working on the piece that is the gold in the pot. And this can slide in and out of it, and you can like leave little secret messages, or you could stamp on this. There are little debossed details on the top of this to tell you where to put the gold coins or some of the gold coins. So I did that, and then I added some more. Just, you know, whatever felt fun, whatever felt like lots. Then I set that aside to dry so we could work on our card base. So here I have a piece of black cardstock that is ever so slightly larger than our background panel. And here is my rainbow, and I'm gonna make a mistake here, or at the very least, I'm gonna change my mind later. So I'm adding glue all over this panel. I'm adding it to my frame. It's leaving this beautiful black border, and then I'm gonna add the bows of my rainbow after that. I got super lucky when I pulled it out of the die. Everything's still sort of precariously held together. So I put glue all over the back of it, and then I'm going to hold up the pot just to kind of get my placement right. I want the pot centered at the bottom, and then I will press down so that those rainbows are firmly glued to my panel. But when I go to trim this off, right, I just use my scissors, I follow along the edge of the cardstock, I'm gonna flip it over, and I don't like that. I kind of wish I had trimmed it so that the rainbow ended at the colored panel and not the black panel behind it. It's an easy enough fix. You can see me like having a little moment here going, oh no, do I fix it? I did. I just took it to my trimmer and I cut off all that excess black cardstock and the little bit of the rainbow that was overhanging that as well. And I will glue it onto a new panel of black cardstock. And then I can go ahead and add the pot. Now I'm going to freeze it here. I added foam on the side and the bottom and a little bit on the feet so that this little piece can still slide in and out of there. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and center that under my rainbow, and I will press down, and it's good to go. I added some foam tape all over the back of that panel because we're just adding all the dimension on this card. I'm going to add some wet glue to make sure I get everything centered, and then I can press it down and we can start working on our sentiment. There are some great sentiments in this release. I love this set. This is the Real Treasure stamp set. It's just a small one, and I'm stamping Wishing You onto a scrap of white cardstock. And then I'm going to bring in the Insider Sentiment Speech Bubbles die set. And so each bubble has 2 dies. This is the inner piece. And I'm going to center everything and run it through my die cutting machine. Then we're going to do some hot foiling. I don't always have the best luck with hot foiling it, so I like to use glossy cardstock. Trinity has this amazing glossy black cardstock, and it comes out perfectly for me every time. If you get the die set that coordinates with that Real Treasure stamp set, it is a cut and foil. And so the 2 big sentiments, the Real Treasure and Pot of Gold, also have a foil plate that comes in that. And then I love that the die cuts beautifully around the whole thing. Like it cuts out even those little inside pieces. That's my favorite. It's just my favorite. I'm going to stack this up a couple times. So I cut that same die out 2 more times from some heavyweight black cardstock just to give it a little extra dimension. And then I'll put my shiny black cardstock right on top to finish that up. Then I can glue it onto the pot of gold. I have another card I've made where I cut this pot of gold hot foil business out using the pot, and it fits. You're going to cut off just a little bit of the expressive ends on the P or the F, but it will fit if you wanted to do that instead. Then I'm going to start assembling my speech bubbles. So I'm going to add this Wishing You and this is the sort of bubbly piece in green. But then the inside die also cuts out this tiny little frame. So I added some rip and stick sheet to the back of some gold foil cardstock, and I'm going to add that around the outside. And I think it just ties in all these pops of shiny gold throughout the card. And so I'm going to have that kind of up to the left, like it's sort of coming out of the pot of gold. And then we're going to stamp on the inside of the card. So it's the same stamp set. And this one says, "And all the joy your heart can hold." And I just love how beautiful all those three pieces are when they come together. So I am stamping that onto my card base before I attach my front panel, because if anybody can end up with a crooked sentiment on the inside of their card, I might be the queen of it. So now that that's in there, I know everything is straight. We're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and glue my card panel together on the front. And that will finish up card number 2. Surprisingly interactive. I will write a fun little note on that gold as you pull it out. Wishing you a pot of gold and all the joy your heart can hold. Ugh. That finishes up our 2 cards for today. I would love to know which one of these 2 cards is your favorite and which one you think you might try. They are both surprisingly easy. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.